Welcome to the podcast today. You don't want to miss this one. If you are interested in skincare and you've ever bought anything from Dermstore.com, this is the conversation with the individual, the physician who founded Dermstore.com. But that's not the only thing that he's done. He's up to a lot of other great things in the skincare world, which we're going to cover. And so today I'd like to welcome onto the podcast and to the YouTube video, Dr. Craig Kraffert, who practices in California. Dr. Kraffert,
Well, Dr.
thank you for coming
Portela,
on
you're
the
welcome.
podcast.
It's an honor and privilege to be here with you. And I've got really four offices in Redding and in Eureka, which is an old coastal town, Medford, Oregon, and Chico, which is a college town just south of Redding.
Okay. I didn't know you were in Medford. When I first opened my practice, I used to do some locums work, and I would often fly into Medford and drive up to Grants
hmm
Pass, where I worked at a clinic there. So right
It's
there
a nice
also.
part of the world here.
So tell me a little bit about your pathway to becoming a dermatologist. Kind of walk us through your
Sure.
history in becoming a
Well,
dermatologist.
even in the olden days, dermatology was a very coveted profession. Actually, getting into medical school even was kind of challenging. And so to get competitive training, you have to do well. I went to UCSD, Revelle College, actually. The Revelle was the founder, Roger Revelle, and he's also the fellow that came up with the original global warming theory, just a fun fact. But after Revelle, I worked
Mm.
at Scripps Institute doing DNA research. That was in the mid 80s. Those were the early DNA days. And left Scripps Institute to go to UCLA Medical School, where I went, worked hard. They graded us on a curve, and it was tough. I got out of there with honors, as it turned out, and did a
hmm
surgical internship at the main UCLA hospital. That was fun. It was every other night call, kind of like going to the military. It was something. And then I moved across the country to the University of Miami for dermatology training. At that time, and even today, it's one of the, I think, top 5 training institutions. It's hard to say among those top schools which one's really the best. It's kind of like football teams. But
hmm
got a
Sure.
great training there. Really
Yeah.
enjoyed it. And my passion for dermatology has really never left. People say, well, why did you choose dermatology? Because people choose it for various reasons. For me, it was some inner calling, not convenience, because I'm working hard. It's not convenient to work hard no matter
hmm
what you're doing. And not for money, because if you do good
Right.
things,
That's right.
money's just kind of an afterthought, really. While in medical school, I did research on Accutane and wound healing. With my mentor, Dr. Richard Bennett, who is a world famous dermatologist, and he's a full professor at both UCLA and USC. So he's kind of a Trojan and a Bruin. It's a weird
hmm
crosstown rival thing in Los Angeles.
hmm
But after training, I moved to a small town. And first and foremost, I've always been a dermatologist. And really, my sense of being is to put optimal care needs for patients front and center. And I always try to put myself in the patient's shoes with my knowledge of dermatology and try to help them sort out what's best for them. I think we all do that when we're doing our best. But I also enjoy business. I do. I
Sure.
like it. I want something where I can express that's not at the expense of patients, because I never want to do that. So,
hmm
and my family's been
Right.
extremely successful in business. So I had a role model. So with the internet back in the late 90s, I mean, the internet was just kind of coming of age. And I said, oh, well, there's a way to scale something. It's very hard to scale dermatology practices, by the way, on one
Right.
hand.
It's a, very labor
Yeah,
intensive.
I saw that, in a small town, I could do something bigger than that small town, offering better service and value to consumers.
hmm
That's what they want, but it takes a lot of hard work, tenacity, and good fortune. And that's really what we put together, and Dermstore came to be, and it thrived. It was a domain that was actually available for purchase at that time. It was in the early days of domains.
Yeah. I want to tell the story of the time that you and I first met, how we got introduced as we were at a conference. We were having lunch and that somebody had kind of introduced us and we were just enjoying a conversation, talking a little bit about our practices. And I remember thinking in my head, looking across the table, I'm like, man, this guy has great skin. There's not an age spot on him. And then it came up that, you mentioned that back in the early 2000s or late 90s, you bought this domain for $8 called Dermstore.com. And I was like, wait a minute. Like I had never put it together that I was sitting across from the person who founded Dermstore, which has been a hugely successful business. And most of the listeners are probably aware if they have not even, also purchased from Dermstore. Now, e-commerce was not, it was just up and coming. Had you seen somebody else be successful with e-commerce? Where did you get the idea that you could create a storefront
Well, there were
and
some
sell
startups back
dermatology
in the day.
products?
And actually, at that time, to be perfectly honest, even Amazon was a bit of a startup. but there were a few startups in the skincare space. They might have been smarter than me, but I hope that if I worked hard enough, I might be able to succeed. So I worked hard. And, you know, I kind of wanted Dermstore to be big. That was my goal from the start. Whenever you want something to be big, you have to build a
Hmm.
rock solid foundation intended for scaling. And I wanted it to be a top skincare
Hmm.
property. Part of that was vertical integration. We did all our own coding. We built vertically integrated processes at every level, from customer service to order fulfillment to online presence.
Now, initially, were you trying to go out and then recruit all of the major skincare brands to come to your domain, or were you selling products that you had in your office? What were the first things?
We started out by carrying products that we knew in the derm space that were marketed to dermatologists. And in the early days, we'd sell whatever we could get our hands on. And sometimes we couldn't get our hands on them predictably.
Mhm.
We opened a skincare spa and retail outlet in order to be able to carry some of the brands that we otherwise could not. And it was tough at first because a lot of people didn't want to deal with us. But as we grew in scale, the dynamic
Mhm.
changed and everybody wanted to talk to us.
And something for the listeners to know is that there's a lot of skincare brands that are, at least most of them, start as physician only dispense. So the only way you're going to be able to go and get that is to walk into a dermatologist or maybe a plastic surgeon's office and get that. And they try to be very tight about selling online, that they don't want that. And so then the concept of authorized retailers came along who would, follow the MAPs and the, regulations around dispensing those. And I would assume that Dermstore was a large driver behind the development of these authorized resellers, and had to be one of the first places that most of these brands went
It's
outside of
true.
dermatologist
And in the
offices.
early days, to try to generate business, we were actually discounters. But one day we had a wake up call and we said, you know what? We're cutting that cold turkey because it hurts everybody. So we dropped that.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
that was really the beginning of our next level scaling, actually.
Well, it's really, fascinating the way that you grew and scale that, and that you started out from the inception of wanting to build something big, something remarkable. And there's no doubt that you did that. There was then a time where you'd built this up and you decided it was time to make an exit. Can you talk about the thinking behind why you decided to leave Dermstore and let somebody else take that over? And would you have done anything differently in hindsight with
Sure, that's a
your
great
ownership of
question.
Dermstore?
Dermstore is one of these long, hard slogs to becoming an overnight success. It was consuming a lot of my bandwidth, personally, professionally, and I had to kind of make a decision whether I wanted to practice medicine or do Dermstore. And I decided to exit Dermstore. And
Mhm.
as you know, last year, Target Corporation, which was the past owner of Dermstore, sold it to some folks in England for about 350 million. So I wouldn't have sold it today.
Mhm.
Uh, because I've become a little wiser and realized that the value of the company was growing rapidly even as it was sold. But on the bright side, there's always a bright side.
Mhm.
I sold it just before the major recession depression
Yeah.
of 2008. Things got really rough then. So, but the only thing I
Yeah.
kept, and it was carved out, the only thing I kept from Dermstore was Amarte because I knew the value of that brand
Mhm.
relative to all the stuff I'd been dealing with in terms of the the actual fundamental value of the products themselves. And I figured if I worked hard enough at it for long enough, we could make something with it.
And Amarte is the skincare brand that you're behind now. So was that something that you acquired prior
It
to
was something
leaving
I began
Dermstore?
working on prior to leaving Dermstore. In fact, I got involved with Amarte through Dermstore. So the way it works once you're a
Mhm.
player is that when you're the CEO of a big retailer,
Mhm.
everybody wants you to sell their stuff. Before we had to beg for stuff. Then at the end, everybody wanted us
Yeah.
to sell their stuff. So I was getting countless requests: sell this, check that, write a review. You can relate, I'm sure.
Sure.
Name a brand. Chances are I've tried it, but I never tried a product like Amarte. But the odd thing was, I was getting requests from my family to try these products. I didn't want to try them at all.
Yeah.
As I saw the success in some of these spa outlets in Asia, I said, well, I'll give it a try. And I started using it. And my fellow dermatologist colleagues said, hey, what's going on with your skin? What are you doing differently? And even today, as an older sun damaged ex
Mhm.
surfer, I get those great skin comments daily. I mean, you mentioned it. I get it from patients all the time.
Yeah. I mean, I noticed it, early in our conversation before I knew anything
Yeah.
about your business
So, I mean,
history.
and you asked, did I acquire it? Well, it's a little different than acquiring. It's really a niche collaboration. In my opinion, it's a collaboration with
Mhm.
the best skincare formulator in all of South Korea, which, as you may know, or is a hotbed for skincare products.
Great skincare,
So
yeah.
I met this formulator through family connections, and as I mentioned, I tried the products once I realized that they were hot and doing extremely well in Asia. And once I tried them, it was all over because people were saying, "Hey, you look better," and I
Hmm.
looked better. So we created an exclusive
Yeah.
contractual collaboration, and we've began our decades-old now international partnership with the intent of creating a different kind of brand, a niche blend with the best parts of the Korean kind of take on skincare and the American take on dermatology and culture, something entirely new. So it's a unique collaborative effort. Where else are you going to find I think a top
Yeah.
dermatologist, I don't mean to sound arrogant, and a proven skincare expert for sure at Dermstore, working with an international savant formulator. Some people just have
Yeah.
a genius for formulation. This is one of those people. And so we've
Hmm.
striven
Yeah.
to make products that are softly unrivaled. I mean, they don't do harsh things to the skin, and which is sort of part of the
Hmm.
concept of Korean skincare, actually.
And you're welcome to toot your own horn as much as you want, but I will, reinforce that Dr. Kraffert, to the listeners, is one of the top dermatologists in the country, and his experience in skincare is unrivaled. And so, I think that you had a keen eye for that, and you definitely found a good brand because we had that conversation, and right away your team, shipped everything out to me, and I mean, from the first step in washing my face, I was like, these are different products. They definitely feel different. And then working through, the moisturizers, the peptides, the retinols, the moisturizers, like the overnight mask moisturizers, and the eye cream, everything just has a very similar texture. And I could not say that there's any other product that's an American brand that I've tried that has a texture that's similar to that, and it really feels great on the skin. So I think you picked a good
Yeah, and
international
formulation of
collaboration
skincare
there.
is different from dermatology. And while some dermatologists formulate on their own, I was looking to sort of impart my expertise with someone who is equally talented at formulation because there's a lot of private label skincare out there.
Mhm,
It's super common and it's super common. That wasn't something I had any interest in.
mhm,
And as for branding, um, I've been the lead force behind the branding of Amarte, and so it's a Korean sort of manufactured product, but it's
mhm.
American branded. And we've been successful with the branding to a greater extent than I expected, and as judged by the amount of mimicry out there. And let's just say I have my
Yeah.
trademark lawyer on speed dial.
You've got that, cease and
It's
desist
been an
ready to
interesting
go.
ride in that regard. I can tell you that more than I could talk about here.
So how did you acquire your knowledge of formulation to work with the, cosmetic chemist on these formulations? Because that's not something that's taught to us in dermatology residency. So you had to acquire that knowledge, and is that something that you, did through working with other brands, or did you, kind of make your own master's degree or PhD
I
as you
think it's
studied that on your
a
own?
school of working together closely with someone who's an expert at it. And my goal has not been to duplicate what they do, but rather to work with them to impart the things that I see American market wants. They want certain things in a vitamin C. They want certain things in the
Mhm,
sunscreen. And the folks on the other side of the pond, the big pond, may see it differently. So working together, and there's certain things we don't want in our products. We don't want parabens. We don't want certain things. Synergizing, realizing that, for example, fragrance free is something that's touted, but fragrance free is super easy. It doesn't really impart a great use experience. So finding fragrances that are transient,
mhm.
safe, and interesting, for example, is something we've worked on together. So it's really a synergy of talents. And I wouldn't say that I'm a formulator per se, but I would say that working together with top formulators, we've been able to influence the net product.
And you certainly have achieved that with Amarte, in my opinion, that you have not only a great product that really makes your skin look good, but the user experience, both in the texture and in the fragrance, the natural fragrances, is really quite an enjoyable experience,
Thank
really
you.
on all of the
It's
products.
been
So
it's been a long run getting a brand up and running. It took quite a while, and it's still an infant. This brand, to be perfectly honest.
when we talk about the uniqueness of Amarte, you talked a little bit about fragrance. I want to ask you about like the texture and what gives it such a unique feel, and what would you want consumers to know about, the uniqueness of the brand in as far as the user experience goes past
Well, I'm
just the
not sure how
fragrance.
much users really want or need to know about the subtleties of formulation. There's a couple things that they do want, and those are the things we're focusing on at the end of the day, and I'll share those. But I'll tell you about really what we
Mhm.
have in terms of our technologies is really an eclectic mix of things that are really available nowhere else. For example, things like nano sulfur. So we take sulfur, we purify it 9 different ways, make it 2 nanometer size, and there's no odor to that sulfur. You don't feel it, you don't smell it. It's completely safe. I
Hmm.
mean, a large part of our bodies are made out of sulfur, and it does great things. It's antibiotic, it's anti-inflammatory, it's brightening, it's exfoliative, does all these things, and it's in the background. You don't even notice it. For example, just one aspect, right? And you mentioned the textures. We think about this concept of cloud cream. So many creams, you put them on your skin, and no matter what, there's something there. With this, there's nothing there, and it
Hmm.
has to do with the types of emollient bases we're using. And they're mainly silica and silicone based, which is not a dangerous thing. Those are entirely safe, EWG sort of compounds. We're delivering a lot of high actives gently as well. Retinol being one. We've had nano-encapsulated retinol for quite a long time. And for example, the eye cream that you talk about that folks use twice daily, I certainly do, is 3.8% retinol, and it's non-irritating. I've actually given up all my
Hmm.
prescription retinoids. I don't use them anymore. No need
Well,
for
they do tend
sure.
to be a lot more irritating, or at least have that potential on a majority of people. Well, kind of walk us through what your skincare routine looks like now. I know you're using the Amarte products, and kind of walk us through, and you can name the name so people can, get an idea as they look at the website what you're using
It's
that
a
gives
100%
you that great
Amarte.
skin.
In the morning, I shower actually once a day, believe it or not. Sometimes twice. But a bar soap is the only stray, and then shaving with Daily Wonder cleansing foam and rinsing. And then after that, exfoliate powder, which is
Hmm.
this foaming exfoliating cleanser. It's daily because it doesn't irritate, yet it's a mechanical exfoliant. It's kind of magical in that it's physical and abrasive, but in a way that doesn't irritate. And then Aqua Mist,
Hmm.
which is a toner that brightens and calms. Our new vitamin C product, which has yet to be released, and I'm going to talk more about that in a minute. Aquaveil,
Yeah,
which is
I'm
this
excited to try that.
unique hydration serum that actually, as you rub it onto your skin, you can actually see the water droplets coming out of it. It's kind of a unique and interesting and almost bizarre phenomenon. Aqua Cream, which has 1% retinol, a lot of arbutin for brightening, and it's super light, just goes right in. Iconic Eye Cream, of course, and then Ultraveil, which is a sunscreen that I've been very much involved in creating because sunscreens are difficult. I'll tell you what. And sunscreens, of course, are
Hmm.
considered drugs by the US FDA. So we have to be very careful how we make them. We came up with something that's super light, makes your skin look good, is 50 plus SPF,
Yeah.
broad spectrum, and water resistant. I mean, it's kind of a miracle that we were able to pull that all off. So I'm real proud of that one, and we worked hard on that. And then the FDA said, "Oh, you're making a sunscreen," and so they paid us a 10-day visit in Korea to inspect our manufacturing facilities. Happy to say we
Hmm.
passed.
Well, that's the sunscreen that I'm wearing today. Thankfully your team sent me
Cool.
like 4 bottles of it, and I'm it's definitely in my rotation as my most used sunscreen over the past
Great.
couple of
And at
months. So,
nighttime, it's a cleansing foam
so
again,
yeah.
Aqua Mist, the new C, Aquaveil, Hydrolift, which is a newly formulated product with 1% retinol and a peptide blend, and sometimes Wonder Cream. They're both great but
Hmm.
different. And of course, Iconic. So it's quite
Yeah.
a regimen. Once in a while, I use the
Yeah.
Overnight Express mask, another product with a unique kind of concept where we're using some honeycomb kind of things to make it work.
Hmm.
Anyway, that's what I can tell you. Yeah, it's been Amarte
Yeah.
Skincare for me for over 10 years, maybe, well, 15 more in terms of
Yeah.
skincare.
I mean, the results speak for themselves. And, I think people that are watching on video, should be able to appreciate the bright complexion that you have. But having, sat across from you and seen it in person, I can attest that you've got really excellent skin, for somebody that is a surfer and spends a lot of time in the outdoors of California. Your skin doesn't show that at all.
Thanks,
So,
Dustin. Yeah, I'm lucky in that regard, and I think the products really had something to do with it for sure.
sure, no doubt about that. And just to clarify for the audience, because I did ask you when we were, sitting across from each other, if you're doing a lot of like Botox or lasers or other things. So I just want to, have you go on the record for like what kind of procedures you do, if any,
Vascular
so people
laser for
understand the degree to
telangiectasia,
which
because I
that might
think
influence your skin.
telangiectasia happens, and some Botox,
Yeah,
glabella. I mean, nobody wants to be angry looking. In fact, I
yeah.
started doing Botox. Yeah,
So
they're in
they're
the
in the
mix.
mix, but
And I'm not a
yeah, that
Hollywood
you're
star
not
who's denying it. Yeah,
reliant on
they're in
them.
the mix. But I haven't had any
Yeah.
resurfacing procedures or anything like that. No.
Okay. All right. That's important. You've been very successful in business. That's inarguable with your creation of Dermstore and now the way that Amarte is growing as a brand. And, we have other dermatologists that listen to the podcast, that watch the show, and even just consumers who are interested in business. What advice would you give yourself if you were to go back at the, origins of your business career outside of medicine to people that want to start or improve their own businesses?
Well, I think the guidance is different for dermatologists versus just folks in general. And for dermatologists, it's specific because that's the life I've lived. And so I have some specific thoughts about that. We have a sacred duty to our patients. I think if we lose sight of that, it's time to look at doing something else, perhaps. And as I mentioned earlier, that obligation is to put ourselves, as best we can comprehend, into the shoes of our patients, and then use our knowledge, experience, expertise, and hopefully wisdom to help guide them and manage their decisions with their best interest at heart. This means, by
Hmm.
definition, no monetization. And that can be hard because it's insidious. Having said that, efficiency
Hmm.
is key. And the goal of any business is to provide better value than competitors and work to scale that value proposition. So, for people in general,
Yeah.
as I mentioned earlier, I've had the privilege of being part of an extremely successful business family. And I've had a mentor who founded that business for 50 years, a mentor. And he shared with me the key entity that leads to success. It's a really simple concept. So, if you want to know what the key to success is, I'm going to tell you in a minute. But the thing to know is that we cannot expect that we're smarter than other guys or gals because they're smart too, and just as
Hmm.
smart, and maybe smarter in some cases. The only way to get ahead consists of two four-letter words. I think you could probably guess what they are, Dustin.
Um,
Hard
I would
work.
say work hard.
Yes. And 40 hours a week isn't going to get you
Yeah.
there. And another key
No.
concept, assuming that your business model is sensible and has objectively reasonable market potential, is this: never give up. Tenacity is an essential attribute, especially early in business.
Yeah, there's certain things you can't control. Yeah, you can't control if somebody's smarter than you, but you can absolutely outwork somebody.
Yeah.
So, no, those are very insightful. As we look at the future of skincare, whether it's Amarte or just the market in general, because you certainly have your finger on the pulse of the skincare market, what are your predictions for the future of skincare? Maybe new molecules or formulations that we're going to see? What do you think is going to be the
Well,
next
I'm going to
hot
call it one
thing?
trend. And the backdrop is that I've been involved with vitamin C forever in terms of topicals at Dermstore selling it. And I never really thought much of it. It's unstable, turns brown, it oxidizes, it becomes ineffective and unsightly, even in the container. And so it's difficult to work with. And I've never actually seen it do much, yet it sells well. And I really couldn't understand that. But
Hmm.
recently, I've been converted because we've been working with a vitamin C compound that actually makes the skin look better, and actually to a great degree overnight. You can't make this stuff up. And I've actually had photos of other people like one day and then the next day. So we've got a way that has made it uniquely stabilized and gentle. But we're going to have it at a little bit of tingle because Americans are accustomed to that. So it's going to
Yeah.
launch in 2023. So I think the vitamin C revolution is coming. And the key is stability and gentleness, just like what we've done across the board with our skincare products. We've been leading with technologies
Hmm.
for quite some time, and I predict others will follow our lead, uh, both by design and product evolution in the space. But as for the real prediction of the future of skincare, it's kind of like smartphones or AI or a lot of things that are just going to move in a certain direction because they have to. And skincare can only go in one
Hmm.
direction. It must serve the master, the skincare consumer. And skincare consumers want
Hmm.
things. They may not realize what they want, but there are things that they want. And there really are two masters to skincare. And skincare has to evolve to serve these masters. And the first one is the products and or regimens must provide socially meaningful improvement in the appearance over the short haul and the long haul. They must make the skin healthier and more aesthetically pleasing. Second, they must be enjoyable. They shouldn't smell like rotten fish or burn or feel greasy. Skincare manufacturers increasingly aspire to create products that are a joy to use rather than a chore. That's been our mission from day
Hmm.
one.
Hmm.
We've had those two masters as our driving force since inception.
Well, they've got to work and they've got to be easy and enjoyable to use. And Amarte has
It's a
mastered
work
that.
in progress. I think
So,
we've done well with it. We always want to improve.
yeah,
The day we
sure.
stop striving to improve is the day we begin to fail, right?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got to keep that hard work going. For the listeners, what would be the number one skincare tip that you could give to them that if anybody could implement one
Switch to
thing,
Amarte.
what would that be?
Just kidding. It's a joke. So here's the thing, though. I'm going to give you the tip at the end. But the skincare market is very noisy, so it's easy to get confused.
Mhm.
So it's important to stay objective, personal, result oriented, and never forget sunscreen. This still isn't my tip. Skincare is surprisingly complex, and very, very few brands have the understanding and means to do it right. So my tip is this: if you're not enjoying your skincare routine and it's not making your skin look meaningfully better, per your friend's assessment, it's time to move on.
Very well said. And every dermatologist that's been on the podcast always talks about sunscreen. And that is no surprise that
Well,
that's one of the
we're
most
taking
important
skincare
things you
off
can
all
do.
day, every day. Yeah, skin cancer. We're taking skin cancer off all
Yeah.
day, every day. That's the problem.
Yeah. Yeah. There's very there's nothing that motivates me to cover my head with sunscreen more than doing a Mo's on the top of somebody's
For sure.
head. Amarte really has built a good brand, and I enjoy using it. I enjoy the results that it gives to my skin, and I would encourage consumers to check out Amarte Skincare. Where would be the best place for them to go to find the products, to purchase them, and to learn more about the
Well,
brand?
first and foremost, AmarteSkincare.com is a place where you can connect with us and purchase our skincare. You can also check us out on Amarte Skincare on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. And actually, we're partnering with practitioners around the country. And so, if any of those practitioners are listening, want to talk to us about something I've sort of tagged as virtual wholesaling,
Mm,
ring us up. And if you see a derm regularly, ask them about Amarte, because more and more
yeah.
folks in our space will be hearing about it. And part of the reason that they haven't heard about it so far is because we've really stayed out of the dermatologist space while we were developing and bringing things up and making them just good enough to really take over that space. We wanted to
Mhm.
enter fully loaded, as it were.
Well, we will make sure that those links and the social media handles are referenced in the podcast show notes and in the YouTube video description so that it's easy for people to come and find the products there. And I'll have to talk to your team about the virtual wholesaling because I truly enjoy the products, and I want that to be known to the listeners, to the viewers, that is a genuine feeling. And that's why I got all the products. And then within a couple of weeks, I'm like, send me more. So, um,
That's great.
yeah, I'll be using them for a long time. Dr. Kraffert, it has been a joy to speak with you and to learn more about your background, your success, and the development of Amarte Skincare as a brand. You truly have some winning formulas there, and I'm excited to see what the vitamin C will be when it comes out. I will gladly sign an NDA and beta test that for you.
Beautiful.
So,
Dustin, it's been a pleasure to work with you. I want to thank you for the opportunity to be on here and with you. I salute your success and entrepreneurial spirit and your dedication to our specialty, dermatology.
well, thank you very much, Craig. We'll see if there's any follow-up questions and maybe have to sit down and have another conversation. I'm sure that we'll be bumping into each other at meetings in the future, and look forward to the continued success of your brand. So thank you, and as we're approaching the holidays, I wish the best for you and your family.
Thank you. Right back at you.